Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dwayne. I got a video for that Kimball, United States Army veteran and retired VA rating specialist. How many veterans know what to do when they find an error in their rating decision? Now, a lot of veterans may say, do a high-level review, but there's something else you can do, and it's called a CUE, a clear and unmistakable error. Today's video, I'm going to give you the time frame to call a CUE. The definition, VA's definition of a CUE. What does that process look like? But most importantly, I'm going to be giving you some examples throughout this video, and towards the end of this video, I am going to share with you some examples of when I had to call a CUE on myself and other raters on my team. Make sure you stick around. All right, everyone, before we get into today's video, just want to remind you, we have two memberships. We have one inside of YouTube and one outside of YouTube. The way to join the one inside of YouTube, click that join button right underneath this video. If you want to join the YouTube membership outside of YouTube, I have a link for you in the description section. It'll take you to the landing page and give you details on the two options that you have. For the month of March, we are offering the first month 50% off. Make sure you put the code in, KMD50. Also, make sure you go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. So, CUEs, clear and I'm getting tongue-tied already. Clear and unmistakable errors. A lot of veterans do not know about this. I did a video a couple of years on it, and they're not taking advantage, okay? So first thing, what is the time frame do you have to call a CUE on a rating decision that you found an error? Guess what? There's no time limit. Other than like a high-level review, you have 12 months from the date of notification, not with the CUE. I've seen CUEs go back 10, 12, 15 years, okay? So you, the veteran, this is another reason why you need to be educated so you understand this process and don't get frustrated. Now, you know I got some slides for you, so let's go ahead and get into it. Slide number one. Here in slide number one, this is the VA's definition in the M21-1 of a CUE, okay? Clear and unmistakable error exists if all three, okay, I got that highlighted in red. You need all three of these of the following requirements are met. First bullet comment, either the correct facts as they were known at the time were not before the adjudicator. The adjudicator overlooked them. Now, I've had to call CUEs on myself. I had to call CUEs on others. And when I go back and I think about it, I'm like, you know what? More than likely, I was just probably rushing, had a lot of information, could have been behind on my production points. Whatever the case may be, VA employees are not perfect. They do make errors and overlook some things sometimes. Second bullet comment, the error must be the sort which, had it not been made, would have manifestly changed the outcome at the time it was made. That's important. Change the outcome at the time it was made. Was the correct percentage assigned? Was the correct effective date assigned? Was the correct diagnosis given? Okay, I've seen that. The incorrect diagnostic code criteria used, all right? The third one, the determination must be based on the record and the law that existed at the time of the prior adjudication in question. That's why you need a copy of your VA claims folder, people, because you need full transparency. It's not what we say, it's what we can prove based on the record and the law that existed at the time when that claim was adjudicated, okay? In the notes section, CUEs are undebatable. If it is not absolutely clear that a different outcome would have resulted, the error complained of cannot be clear and unmistakable, okay? It has to be clear, people. You just can't say, oh, I feel that they overlooked this or I feel they overlooked that. No, it has to be clear. And I know a lot of you are going to say, Dwayne, what about this situation? What about this situation? And I'm going to respond, I don't know, because I have to look at all the evidence, not just what you're telling me, okay? So when you call a CUE, you need all of that information, just not bits and pieces. The second bullet comment, CUEs can be alleged by a claimant or discovered by the Department of Veterans Affairs during the adjudication of a claim. I've actually found some CUEs before it even went out to the veteran, okay? But the majority of them, they've already gone out, okay? Let's keep going. Slide number 2. Here in slide number 2, we have, this is the 38 CFR that was on the first slide, okay? So I'm not gonna go through and read all of it, but I only copy part of this 38 CFR, okay? So make sure you got the number, 38 CFR 3.105 subpart A, revisions of decision. Now this is the definition as well. I have it highlighted there in the second paragraph, definition of clear and unmistakable error. You need to read this so you understand, okay? And read it again and read it again. Let's look at that third paragraph, effective date of reversed or revised decisions. For the purpose of authorizing benefits, the rating or other adjudicative decision which constitutes a reversal or revision of a prior decision on the grounds of clear and unmistakable error has the same effect as if the corrected decision had been made on the date of the reversed decision. Now, I'm going to give you an example, personal example. Oh, not a personal example, but it was my first error ever made as a rating specialist. And you heard me talk about this in my videos on how to win your claim for tinnitus. And that was the first CUE. Veteran claim tinnitus. I looked through the medical records, all that, requested C&P exam. It comes back. The doctor, the examiner, the C&P examiner gave a negative medical opinion. So I denied the claim. About a month later, quality personnel was working on the team. Say, Dwayne, I need to talk to you. This is your first error. And I'm like, oh man, what happened? He was like, hey, the veteran actually complained of tinnitus in service, which was documented. We had those records at the time I adjudicated. And I was like, yeah, but the examiner said no. And he stated there's a reference that states if there's a complaint or diagnosis in service for tinnitus, it's a grant, even if the doctor says no. So he was like, you got to call a CUE. And I was like, a what? He was like, a CUE, and he explained it. And then we had to have some training on it because other people had got some errors and had to call CUEs as well. That was my first CUE. Now, if you go back and look at the previous slide and this one, guess what was a record when I adjudicated? The veterans' medical records from active duty showing that complaint. Maybe it was a diagnosis, but I think it was just a complaint of tinnitus during service. So the rating had already went out. The veteran had been notified. So then I had to call a CUE, do another rating decision, and actually grant the benefit, okay? And in addition to that, I almost forgot, in addition to that, the effective date. So it had already been a couple of months, had already passed, so I had to go back and grant the effective date of date of claim, the date that we received the 526EZ. Now, a lot of people may say, well, Dwayne, why you didn't do it from the intent to file? Because when I first started rating, intent to files were not a thing at the time, okay? But if it was an intent to file at the time, then I would have had to grant the date of the intent to file. Let's keep going. Slide number 3. Here in slide number 3, here's another M21-1, but it talks about the previous 38 CFR that we looked at, okay? So it states, provides that if a CUE is established in a previous final decision, then the previous decision is reversed or amended. Okay, I just gave you an example of that. And the effect is the same as if the corrected decision had been made on the date of the reverse decision. There you go. Prime example is one I just given you, okay? So somebody else found something, basically somebody else, another rater found something and said, hey, this rater didn't do this, they should have done that, all right? Now, CUEs, sometimes they go in favor for the veteran and sometimes they do not. But for the most part, what I saw, they actually went in favor of the veteran. And again, towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you some examples. Let's keep going. Slide number 4. Identifying a CUE. Now, this is where I'm talking to you, veteran. This is where I'm talking to you because I've get comments from several veterans and they'll say, well, Dwayne, what about this and what about that? And then when I start asking questions, they were like, well, I didn't really read my rating decision, which technically means you didn't read it. I skimmed through it, which technically means you didn't read it. You need to read that rating decision from front to back once, twice, 3 times and understand the information that's in it. If you don't understand it, make sure you give it to somebody that does understand rating decisions that can explain it to you, okay? A CUE will fall into one or more of the following categories, all right? The decision maker failed to apply or incorrectly applied the appropriate laws or regulations. Involve pre-reduction due process or the failure to apply a statutory or regulatory presumptive. All right, I'm gonna give you a quick example. If someone is, let's say they propose to reduce someone for whatever reason, okay? They're saying we're gonna propose this veteran to reduce this veteran from 70% PTSD down to 30%. And there's a DBQ from the veteran's private examiner. And the DBQ is listed in the evidence section of that rating decision. I come along and I'm going to do the final decision, the final reduction. But then when I look at, maybe there's a VA CMP exam in there that shows 30%. But then when I look at the veterans, private DBQ, let's say it shows 100%, and the DBQ is sufficient per what? 38 CFR 3.326 subpart B. All right, well, I disagree with that. So what I'm going to do, since the veteran have already been proposed, I might call a CUE and say, nope, we're not going to do this. Actually, we're going to grant the increase. That has happened before, okay? Let's keep going. The decision maker overlooked material facts of record. I talked about that before. Overlooked. I've overlooked some things. Running 100 miles a minute, trying to meet my production quota, and yes, VA employees are on production quotas, and sometimes they miss stuff. It happens. So again, it's important for veterans to get educated, or your lawyer, or your claims agent, or your VSO. They can look at this stuff too. Ask them, hey, I've received a rating decision last month. Did you all review it? They probably tell you no. Back in the day, they used to review it. Now they don't. The last one, the decision maker failed to follow a procedural directive that involved a substantive rule, a rule that regulates a right. Trying to think of an example for that one, even before when I was doing the research. If the best example I can give you, a 38 CFR. So think about 38 CFR for effective dates, 38 CFR for the diagnostic codes, okay? Because the rating schedule criteria that's in there. So when you get a copy of the CMP exam and you claim diabetes, Agent Orange presumptive, and they gave you 20%, but it should have been 40% because there was a letter in there for your doctor that spelled out that you had regulation of activities, restricted diet, and daily insulin, but they only use the information from the VA CMP examiner, okay? So it will fall under that 38 CFR, the diagnostic code criteria, all right? Important, a duty to assist deficiencies such as insufficient examination cannot form a basis for CUE since such deficiency creates only an incomplete rather than an incorrect record, okay? So you saying I had an insufficient exam, it was only 5 minutes, they didn't ask me any questions, that's not a CUE. A failure to consider VA medical records, which were in VA's constructive possession at the time of the prior decision, may constitute a CUE if such failure affect the outcome of the claim. Here's a prime example. I was rating a claim. The veteran was service-connected for, I think, a left knee replacement, and they came in for the right knee secondary to the left knee. When I went back and looked at the previous rating decision to make sure the veteran was service-connected for that condition, the right knee replacement was granted at 30%, but guess what? A temporary 100% was not given. All right, because when you have a right knee replacement, I'm sorry, not 10%, 100% was not given. Years ago, we would have to do a year at 100%. Now it's based off the number of months of convalescence, physical therapy, restriction, return to work restrictions, and stuff like that, okay? So not only was the temporary 100% for that 12 months was not given, the veteran also met the criteria for housebound because that temporary 100%, the veteran had additional disabilities that were 60% or higher. So therefore, it was not only one CUE, there were two CUEs. So I had to call two CUEs, and the veteran had a positive opinion for the right knee secondary to the left knee. I went ahead and granted that. So instead of one issue on that rating decision, there were three, and two of them was a CUE. All right, let's keep going. Slide number 5. Considering requests for revisions based on CUE. Although there is no specific claim form required to request revision of a decision based on CUE, the request must be submitted in writing and signed by either the claimant or the authorized representative. Now, this is what I recommend. Which form to use? VA Form 21-526EZ, prescribed claim form. Do you have to use that claim form? No. This M21 manual reference states that you don't. The reason why I would do it is because VA employees look at that. VA Form 21-526EZ, if that is not the main form, it's one of the main forms that's in every veteran's claims file, and it's going to be noticed opposed to a letter or correspondence received from a veteran. When that VSR sees that 526CZ, they're going to look at it, boom, they're going to assess that EP for that CUE. What do we have there in the notes section? A claimant is not entitled to request CUE again once there has been a final decision denying CUE on the same basis. There it is. Clear and simple. All right, so I gave you some examples throughout, but here's some things that you want to look for. The effective date, okay? The effective date. Is the effective date correct? When you get that rating decision and you say, oh, wait a minute, they went from the date of claim, and the date of claim is the date that they received that prescribed claim form. But you may have an intent to file, all right? So go right to the evidence. Was the intent to file there? Yep. 526-0995, was that there? Yes. Let me look at that effective date. Wait a minute. The reasoning for this effective date, we received your claim on this date. The intent to file is in the evidence section. You can call a CUE on that because that information was part of the record at the time that claim was adjudicated. Now, here's another example that I had to call the CUE on someone else. And I gave you this example a little bit earlier. A rater had granted the veteran, I think it was a cancer. It was a cancer, and they gave him a temporary 100% for 6 months. And the veteran had additional disabilities that were 60% higher. Now, This was years ago. And we used to use a program called RBA 2000. So if you're a VA employee and you're familiar with that program, drop me a like in the comment section. Let me know. Hey, Dwayne, I remember that, okay? And so back then, you had to be conscious and say, oh, I have to grant SMCS housebound because the veteran meets the scheduler criteria. The rater did not do it. When it came to me to verify, to keep the 100%, confirm and continue to 100% or reduce it, I noticed that the rater did not grant SMCS housebound. Therefore, I had to call a CUE. Now, VBMS, that's the new program. Whenever you grant a single 100%, it used to give us a message, say, hey, I see that you granted the veteran a temporary 100% or 100% for whatever condition, verify SMCS. So you're like, oh, right, I forgot, almost forgot. Let me go ahead and take issue with that, okay? But that was the old system, the RBA 2000, and now the VBMS are. Totally two different systems. But you, the veteran, first thing you got to do, get a copy of your claims folder. Second, make sure you read that rating decision from front to back. Know what has been submitted from you to the VA and what other documents that's listed in that evidence section and the information that's within those documents. Therefore, if you can confirm a CUE, go ahead and submit that VA Form 21-526EZ, spell it out for them, use some 38 CFRs, some M21-1 manual references, and trust me, you will not regret it. With that being said, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and as always, share this video with your fellow veterans. Thank you.